Today, we learned about the machlokes in the Mishnah between Rav Yehuda and the Rabbanon, whether or not if someone was noyev, was mizana b'shoigig with Eishes Aviv, who's also imoy, according to the Tanakama, you bring 2 korban chatases, and according to Rav Yehuda, you only bring 1 korban chatas. And according to the Maskana, Rava explained Abaye's explanation of Rav Yehuda that it says in the pasuk, "Ervas avicha vervis imcha loy segale imcha." He tells me that the iser, if they're both together, Eishes and aim, is not iser Eishes. Iser's aim only, and that's why you bring 1 korban. That is how the Gemara ended off yesterday. Tanya. Now we have a brisa that's going to elaborate, going through the entire way that Rabbi Yehuda darshans the pasuk, and the entire way that the Rabbanan darshan the pasuk. So it's going to fill in some of the gaps that we have not yet filled in yet, such as what do you learn from Avichahi? Tanya Kavasei de Rava, we're going to bring a brisa that's going to explain Rav Yehuda the way Rava explained Abaye, how he explained Rav Yehuda Shita. It says, Ish prat l'katan, asher yishkav es eishes aviv. So let's look. The ish asher yishkav es eishes aviv, ervas aviv gila, mois yumtzu shnehem demeim bam. So this is in Kedoshim, not by the Ashara, but by the Einish. The Ashara is where the Torah tells you don't do it. That's in Acharei Mois. In Kedoshim, the Torah says, and if you did do it, this asher yishkav es eishes aviv, as Eishes Aviv Ervas Aviv Gila Mois Yumsu Shneim Demeim Bam. And if you remember, it's the Gzer Shavah from this pasuk, where according to Abaye, Rabbi Yehuda learned that Ervas Avicha doesn't mean that someone was Noyef Mishkav Zachar with his father. Rather, it means someone was Mizana with his father's wife. So Ish Prat Lakatan Asher Yishkav Es Eishes Aviv Mashma Bein Eshes Aviv Shei Imoy, Ubein Eshes Aviv Shaloi Imoy. What about Imoy She'ena Eshes Aviv Minayin? How do you know that there's an Oynish for someone whose Mizana was his mother, who was never his father's wife, meaning he was born out of a rape where his father raped his mother, but they were never married? Talmud Loimer Ervas Aviv Gila, which is what it says in this pasuk. Ervas Aviv Gila, Mufnit, extra, Lahakish v'lodun mimenu gzer shava, to learn a gzer shava. Mois yumsu. So the gzer shava is to tell us that in the lav, that in the Ashara, the lav, which is in Parshas Acharei Mois, it's referring to Sai Aviv, that's Imoy that's also Eshes Aviv, and also Imoy that's not Eshes Aviv. Mois Yumsu, what does it mean, Mois Yumsu? In the pasuk, it's Beskila. Zog to Gemara, Ata Omer Beskila. Imoy is Beskila, Eshes Aviv is Beskila, Oy Einoi Ella, the Achas Mikol Misais Hamurish B'Torah. Maybe it's one of the other Misais. Nemer Kan Demeim Bom. It says over here, Mois Yumsu Shneim Demeim Bom. Nemer Ba'oivi Yadoni Demeim Bom, like we learned yesterday. Mal Alon Beskila, just like by Oivi Yadoni, the Demeim Bom refers to the Misa of Skila. Avkan Beskila. So Einish Shamanu, this pasuk is the Einish, one that is mezana with Eishes Aviv or with Ima, he gets Skila. That's the Einish. As Haraminayin, where do you see the lavin for each of these halachas? Talmud Leimer, back to our psukim that we were handling with yesterday. Ervas Avicha loy segale, Ervas Avicha zu Eishes Avicha. That's Eishes Avicha. Atayim Eishes Avicha. Is that what Ervas Avicha means in Parshas Acharei Mois? Maybe it means not the wife of your father himself. Zog to Gemara, Nemer Kan Ervas Avicha loy segale. It says in Acharei Mois, Ervas Avicha loy segale. When Nemer Lahalon, it says in Kedoshim that we just learned Ervas Aviv Gila, and there for sure Mal Alon Beishus HaKosef V'Daber. Just like over there, we know it's speaking about the wife of your father because it says Beferish Ish Asher Yishkav Eishes Aviv. That's called Ervas Aviv Gila. When we say Ervas Aviv Gila, what do we mean? Not your father himself. We mean your father's wife. Afkan, so too by the Asara of Ervas Avicha Loy Segalei, will say, Af kan be ishus akos v'daber, that was the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda. Umashma, and Ervos Avicha lois agalei is mashma, bein eishes of shehi imoy, bein eishes of she'eno imoy. If it's eishes of, it fits that description. What about if it's imoy, but it's she'eno eishes of minayin? Talmud Leimer, for that we have in Parshas Achar Mois, Ervos imcha lois agalei. So when it says Ervos imcha lois agalei, ainly alabasara, we only know that there's a lot. She'asa kosav imoy, she'eno eishes of ki imoy she eishes of. We know legabe the lab in Achar Mois, it's treating imoy like eishes of. That's not imoy. But oynish minayin, you don't have a pasuk ever that clearly states what the oynish is of someone who is mezana with his mother. We're going to have to also learn it out of the same gzera shava. Nemekan ervos avicha lois agalei, right near ervos imcha lois agalei. V'nemer lahalon in Parshas Kedoshim by the oynish ervos of gila, and we already learned ma ba'asaras asay. Ma ba'asara, just like in das hara, which is in Parshas Achar Mois. Asa akasav imoy she'eno eishes aviv ki imoy she'i eishes aviv. We treat ervas imcha just like ervas avicha, and they have the same halacha that you're not allowed to. Af ba'oinish, so too, where in Parshas Kedoshim the Torah teaches us the oinish of skila that applies to eishes av. Asa akasav imoy she'eno eishes aviv ki imoy she'i eishes aviv. We treat imoy just like we would treat eishes aviv because of that gzera shava, and she also is, and they're also biskil. And then we still have the final imchahi, which is how Rava explained imchahi according to Abaye, to show that there's only a chi of imcha. You might have thought, since the Torah puts imcha loisagali, ervas imcha loisagali right in ervas avicha loisagali, that the lav is the lav of the ver that you were over is the ver of eishazav, kamashlon imchahi. When it's your mother, there's only one chi of chatos, and that's for imcha, not for eishazav. So this is exactly how Rava explained Abaye in Rabbi Yehuda yesterday, but it lays it all out very nicely. So we cover all our bases. We know a makar for everything, right? We know why imcha. The main thing we know is why imcha. If it's imcha, you only bring a chadus for aim. We know that ervas avicha means his wife, not him himself, and we have a gzera shava to tell us that just like by ervas avicha, if someone is mezana with his father's wife, he gets skila. So too, if someone's mezana with his mother, he gets skila as well if it's b'meisa. And now the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan, remember, doesn't darshan imchahi, because the Rabbanan darshan that if someone is chayte with his mother, who's his father's wife, he brings two karbonos. So this is how the Rabbanan learn all these psukim. Rabbanan ervas avicha mamish. He learns ervas avicha doesn't mean someone was mezana with his father's wife. It means someone was mezana with his father mamish. So he doesn't learn that gzera shova that Rabbi Huda did from the oynish to tell you that ervas aviv means eishes aviv. Rather, he learns ervas avicha in Achar Mois means literally ervas avicha. So, frank the Gemara, hi, maybe ezacher nafka. Why do I need a special pasuk that tells that someone cannot be mizana with his father? A person can't be mizana with any male. The ezacher, we know it from the ezacher lo yishkav bishkaveisha. You're not allowed to be mizana with a man. Zok Gemara, it's true, but l'chai ve'yolov shtayim. According to the Rabbanon, if someone is mizana with his father, he'll be over two isurim. He'll be over the generic isur of mishkav zacher, and he'll also over the specialized isur of ervus avicha loisegave. Uchad Rabbi Yehuda, and this will actually use a different halacha that Rabbi Yehuda taught us. Dom Rabbi Yehuda, Nachri Abal Oviv, and Rashi tells us that the Gemara will momentarily tell us that this Nachri means his own son, but it doesn't want to say it because it's not nice, so it's using the word Nachri, but it means someone who's Bal Oviv, Chayiv Shtayim, he'll be Chayiv too, just as we just said. Sai for Mishkav Zachar and Sai for Erva Savir. Habal Achei Oviv. What if someone is mezana with the brother of his father? Again Chayiv Shtayim. Again he will be Chayiv too. And Rashi says why? It says Ve'zochar le'sishkav, the generic Isser of Mishkav Zochar. And it also says in the Pasuk, Ve'ervas achei avicha lo'isagalei. And once again, he doesn't learn this is referring to the wife of your father's brother, the mashmalei mamish. He'll learn that it's literally being mizana with your father. Amarava, mistaver milsid Rabbi Yehuda. It's mistaver to say that according to Rabbi Yehuda, there would be two isurim by his father and Mishkav Zochar is be Yisrael. It was a yid. It wasn't a nochri, and it was b'shoigeg because you can't kill somebody twice, but you could have someone bring two chatois. Well, the carbon we're referring to the carbon. The Haida Kalmer Nachri. The words of Rabbi Yehuda was Nachri Abba al Oviv. Why did Rabbi Yehuda use the word Nachri if it's talking about a Ben Yisrael, speaking about a son? Lishnama al Yehu. It's merely a nicer lashon. Who wants to say such a thing out of their mouth that someone was mizana with their father? The Yisal Kedaitach Nachri Mamish. If you are going to learn that Rabbi Yehuda actually meant a goy, Dinoi Mainu Katla. A goy doesn't have a carbon chatas if he's b'shoigig. A goy, whether he's measured or shoigig, he doesn't even need a sra. He gets killed. So betray katlas lay, he can't mean a goy, and he has two chiyuvei misa, one for his father and one for Mishkav Zochar, because you can't kill somebody twice. It has to be referring to a carbon chatas because that's possible to have twice. As Rashi says, Dina mai katla. The Gemara come on by Pirka. We're soon going to learn on Dafim Zayin that Asara Shalom Zui Misasa. Even a lav for a goy is an automatic misa. Tanya Namihachi, we have another brayso to support this. Habal Oviv, if someone's mizana with his father directly, Chayiv Shtayim. Habal Achei Oviv, Chayiv Shtayim. For Ikud Amri, there's one way to learn this brayso, is that it's the loy Rabbi Yehuda. Because we know our Rabbi Yehuda, our Rabbi Yehuda says the halay mashma ervas avicha mamish. Right, Rabbi Yehuda learns that ervas avicha doesn't mean you're mizana with your father, because he used Gzer Shava just a moment ago to say that ervas avicha means ervas eshes avicha. But the ikad amri afilu tem Rabbi Yehuda. Maybe even Rabbi Yehuda would agree to this halacha that bal of chayiv shtayim. But not because of the pasuk of Ervas Avicha, because we've already established that according to Rabbi Yehuda, Ervas Avicha means Eishes Avicha. So how would he know that if someone was mezana with his father that he's over to Lavan? He would learn it from a Kal V'chomer of Achei Aviv. By Achei Aviv, he could learn that it literally means he was mezana with his father's brother. You can make a Kal V'chomer. Uma Achei Aviv, the Korva the Aviv. That's only also to him, in addition to the Mishkav Zochar, but it's only also to him because the father's brother is close to him through his father. And nevertheless, Chayiv Shtayim, you see there's going to be two Chiyuvei Chatos. Aviv like Holshkein, surely if he was Mazana with his father himself, he would be Chayiv two Chatos. The Kamivagli Beplukta Dabaye, whether or not this can be consistent with Rabbi Yehuda, will be Toila in the Machloikas Abaye and Rava if you hold Onchin Minadin. Here we're relying on the Kal V'chomer to be mechayiv somebody a carbon chatas. So Mar Sover Onchin Minadin. The Mandama will learn that this is Rabbi Yehuda would have to work and say that you could learn through a Kal V'chomer that was a chiv chatas. Mar Sover and the Mandama will hold you can't say to Rabbi Yehuda Sover Ein Onchin Minadin. Zokt Gemara. So let's fill in now the gaps. V'Rabbanon. Asara la'eshes aviv minoluhu. Other Rabbanon, where do they see a lav to eshes aviv? If it says ervas avicha lo yisagalai, and the Rabbanon learns not speaking but Mishkav Zochar, so where is the lav that prohibits nus with the wife of your father? So nafkaluhu, we have another pasuk in Achrimos where it says me'ervas eshes avicha lo yisagalai. There it says beferish eshes avicha. So that will be the makar of the lav for eshes avicha, according to the Rabbanon. Rabbi Yehuda already learned it from ervas avicha. So why do you need a second pasuk of ervas eshes avicha lo yisagalai? Isn't that the same as ervas avicha? So tomorrow Rabbi Yehuda hahumi boyele la'ashara la'eshes aviv la'achar misa. How do you know that if it's no longer eshes aviv? For instance, your father died already. How do you know that woman is still also to you? That you learn from the second pasuk. Ervas eshes avicha lo yisagalai, whether or not your father's alive or not, it's still also to live with his Amun. How is the Rabbanan going to know that? Because remember, we just said that he uses Ervas Eishes Avicha to tell you while he's alive, you can't have znus with his wife. How do you know that even when he's dead? Rabbanan Ahu Miseifa de Kranafka, he learns it from the Seifa of that same pasuk where it says Ervas Avicha he. So now we've just uncovered a new halacha. Remember, we knew what Ervas Imechi is used for. Now we know what Ervas Avicha he is used for, according to the Rabbanan, to teach us that even after your father dies, his wife is still also to you. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda already knows that. Rabbi Yehuda already knows that from. He already knows that from Ervas Eishes Avicha. So what does he learn from Ervas Avicha? He Hamiboyle Mishum Eishes Av Atem Echayvoy ViAtem Echayvoy Mishum Eishes. Rabbi Yehuda will learn a new chiddush that when someone is mezana with his father's wife, there is no Isser Eishes Ish there. It's only Eishes Avicha. Frank the Gemara, how could you say that's what Rabbi Yehuda holds? Go back to our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says no such thing. That is our Mishnah. Bein b'chaya of it, bein la'achamis is of it. And v'loy polag Rabbi Yehuda. Remember, in our Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda only argues about aim. If it's imoy and eshes he holds that you only have to bring a chatas for imoy. But the second thing that the Mishnah said, that if it's eshes av, that you also have to bring a chatas for eshes ish, that he doesn't argue on. So how could you say that Rabbi Yehuda learns that there is no din eshes ish by eshes av? Rabbi polig b'braisa. Rabbi Yehuda argues in the braisa. But as I said yesterday, where do we have a braisa? The Gemara doesn't quote a braisa anywhere where he argues. So the Mesivta brings down that there's a Tosefta, in fact, that quotes a Rabbi Yehuda that says that if someone's mezana with Eishes Aviv, there's no Isser Eishes Ish there, it's only Eishes Aviv. And how does he know it? From Ervas Avicha he. V'Rabbanan oynish the Eishes Aviv l'achamish seminalu. According to the Rabbanan, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the same Gzer Shava that he had that mixes the two psukim from the Kedoshim to Achar Mois will include the Chiyav Skila for Eishes Aviv even La'achar Misa. But according to the Rabbanan, who doesn't have that Gzer Shava, so how is he going to know that this new lav that we just uncovered of Eishes Aviv La'achar Misa, how do we know what the oynish for that lav is? How do we know that it also carries a Chiyav Skila? So Rabbi Yehuda, Ma'iselo b'Gzer Shava. Rabbi Yehuda has this overall general Gzer Shava that compares the pasuk in Kedoshim that says v'ish asher yishkav es eshes aviv ervas aviv gila, and that mixes all of the lavin from Achar Mois to Kedoshim, and it says there Mois yumsu shneim demeim ba. So Rabbi Yehuda has the catch-all Gzer Shava. But the Rabbanan don't darshan that Gzer Shava. And if you remember, it's because he holds that Ervas Avicha means Mishkav Zachar. It doesn't refer to Eishes Aviv. So El Rabbanan Minalu, how is he going to know that Eishes Aviv L'achar Misa has a Chiyav Skila? Amrilach, he will learn it from Hahu Ervas Aviv Gila. Same Ervas Aviv Gila that we just quoted, that Rabbi Yehuda uses as part of the Gzer Shava. The Rabbanan won't learn it as Gzer Shava, but they'll just learn from those extra words that stand alone. Halacha. The Mapik lo Rabbi Yehuda l'Gzer Shava, that Ervas Aviv Gila that Rabbi Yehuda used for the Gzer Shava, Mafkile inu, the Rabbanan will use it to teach you l'Einish to Eishes Aviv l'Achar Misa. They'll use Ervas Aviv Gila to tell you extra words to teach you that Ervas Aviv, meaning if someone was mezana with his father's wife, even though his father is no longer alive, there will be a Chiyav Skila. Rabbanon oynish li'imai she'eino yeshes aviv minalahu. We know if someone is mezana with his mother, even though his mother was never married to her father, there's got to be a Chiyav Misa. According to Rabbi Yehuda, again, we know that from the Gzer Shava. But how does the Rabbanan know? How do the Rabbanan know that? Amar Rab Shisha b'rei d'Ravidi Amar Kra imchahi. That's what he learns from imchahi, and that was the famous Rab Shisha b'rei d'Ravidi that we quoted yesterday. Also, because of le'imoy she'enoi eshes aviv, ki imoy she'eshes aviv, it has all the same halacha of eshes aviv, just like eshes aviv we've determined. Gets skila, so to imchahi, his mother as well gets skila. So this covers all the bases of how Rabbi Yehuda walks us through the entire sugya, and how the Rabbanan walk us through the entire sugya, And now we know the mystery behind why Rabbi Yehuda said that if it's Imay and Eishes Aviv, there's only one Chatos that's brought. Okay, now we can move on to the next halach in the Mishnah, which was Haba'al Kalosoi. The Mishnah says that there's two Yisurim there, there's Kalosoi, and there's also Eishes Ish. Frank Gemara, why isn't there a third Chiyuv as well by Kalosoi? U'lechayev namim shum Eishes B'noi. Why is that? Because if you look at the pasuk says as follows. The pasuk says, the pasuk is not quoted here, but Rashi quotes the pasuk, and the pasuk says, it says in the pasuk, "Ervas kalos aloisegale," and then it says, it doesn't say kalos chahi, it says "Ervas kalos aloisegale eishes bin chahi." So it's calling it now a new thing. So every time someone's mizana with his daughter-in-law, he's been mizana with his daughter-in-law, and he's also being mizana with eishes bincha. So there should be two lavin wrapped up in there, plus the eishes ish. It should be a total of three. So the Torah introduces the Isser of Erbas Kalos Chalois Segalei. But then it says eishes bin chayi, not because it's a whole new entity. All the Torah is doing by saying eishes bin chayi and not kalos chayi is defining what kalos chayi is. Kalos chayi is eishes bin. So it's really one and the same. So there's only two lavin, kaloscha, which is also eishes bin, as well as eishes ish. Gewaltig. Now we're on to the next Mishnah. We're not escaping complexity, but we're escaping this complexity. Zok Heilige Mishnah. Haba ala zocher, someone who's mezana with a male, and that means he penetrates the male. Because the Gemara is going to make a very strong distinction between someone who's mizana with a male who's penetrating the male versus the one who's being penetrated by the male. So Abal Azach means he's penetrating the male. V'ala behema, or he penetrates a behema, or v'isha hamavia es habehema, or a woman who allows a behema to penetrate her. B'skila, the animal gets skila as well. Fact the Gemara, im adam chata, behema machata. Okay, the adam did an avera. He was mizana with a behema. The woman was did an avera. She was mizana with the behema. But what did the behema do? Behema does not bechira. So behema machata. Ella, there's two reasons of the Mishnah why the behema gets killed. Number one is Ella lefisha ba adam takol al yod. Since a person came to a michshah through this behema, therefore lefichach omer akasav tisaka. Why did the behema get killed? Because through the behema, this person was nichshel in a terrible avera. That's one shot why we killed the animal. Can you imagine if this animal doesn't get killed? It's going to be a terrible bizoyan for this family. Because every time that animal walks down the street, everyone's, oh, I know that animal. That's the animal that was Mazana with Chaim Yankel who was killed. So to prevent that bizoyness, we eliminate the animal as well. So either the animal did something wrong, it tripped up somebody, or because the animal is going to be mevazah somebody by its mere existence. Zok Heilige Gemara. Zachar minalam. How do you know that there's an iser of mishkav zachar? B'toner banan ish prat lakatan. That means only a gadol gets misa for mishkav zachar. Asher yishkav zachar, but who does this male adult have to penetrate in order to be chayiv misa? It's bein gadol bein katan. In other words, if someone penetrates a male, the person who penetrates, in order for him to be chayiv misa, he has to be an adult. But the person who he penetrates doesn't necessarily have to be an adult. If the person is an adult, maybe that person will get killed as well. And if that person is not an adult, the person won't get killed. But the adult who did the penetration, he for sure will be chayiv misa. Mishkevei isha, right? It says v'ish ki yishkav is zachar mishkevei isha. What does mishkevei isha means? Magid l'chakosov shnei mishkevei speech. It's telling us that there's two ways to be mizana with a female. Bia kedarka and bia shaloi kedarka. In other words, don't tell me that bia shaloi kedarka is not considered a bion. There would be no ramification. There would be no punishment. That's not true. It's the same thing. A bia shaloi kedarka is just like a bia kedarka. That's what we learned from Mishkevei Isha, which tells us now that bia shaloi kedarka, which is the only type of bia available for a male, will also create a chiv misa. Rabbi Shmuel, Hareza Bolo Lamed, talking directly about Isha, but V'nim Salamat, it's now teaching the way to be over Mishkav Zachar. And that is through Bia Shalai Kedarka. Then the pasuk goes on, Moish Yumsu. What type of Misa does a Mishkav Zachar get? Biskila. Ata Oimer Biskila, Oy Eine Ella, the Achatz Mikol Misa Shamurish B'Tayr. Maybe it's a different Misa. Who said we're talking about Skila? Zakt Gemara, the same lima that we learned about, that proliferates the Chiyuv Skila to all other Chiyuvei Skila, Nemer Kan Demei and Bam, but Nemer V'Yidoni Demei and Bam. Ma'ala Halon B'Skila, just like V'Yidoni, the expression of Demei and Bam meant Skila, Afkan B'Skila, so too Mishkav Zachar gets Skila. Turning on Talmud Beis. Oynish Shomanu. It says, V'ish Ki Yishkav es Zachar Mishkav Isha, he gets Skila. So that is where the Torah says what happens if you're over. But as Harvinine, where is the lav that prohibits Mishkav Zachar? Talmud Leimer, it says V'Zachar lo Shishkav Mishkav Isha. So that's where the lav is. And the Torah says regarding one who does something so abominable like that is to'evahi. It's an abomination. So lamadu asara l'shoichet. We have a law that says you're not allowed to penetrate another male. But as hara l'nishka b'nayin, how do we know it's also to allow oneself to be penetrated by a male? There we don't have a pasuk to tell us that. Talmud Loimar, for that we have a different pasuk that says lo yiyeh kadesh mi b'nei Yisrael. There shouldn't be a yid who is going to prepare himself to znus, allow someone to be mizana with him. That's referring to someone allowing himself to be penetrated by a male. The oimer, and there's another pasuk that tells us, how do we know that this lo yiyeh kadosh is referring to being penetrated by a male? So the oimer, it says the gam. The pasuk says, let's read it inside. The gam kadesh. Let me make sure I'm reading it right. The gam kadesh haya be'eretz. There was also znus in the land. Also kecholat ha'evois hagoyim. The Eden did like all the abominations of the goyim. Asher harish Hashem b'nei bnei Yisrael, that were thrown out of Eretz Yisrael because of their abomination. So Dam Kodesh Haya Be'eretz Azu Kol Tevis Hagoyim Asher Harish. And Rashi explains what this limud is. Zok Rashi v'gam Kodesh Haya Be'eretz Ma Kodesh Omer Kan Yesh Boy Te'eva. Just like the Kodesh that says the Gam Kodesh Haya Be'eretz Azu Kol Te'eva, so it's referred to as a Te'eva. V'hadar Garminon Te'eva Ha'omer B'lo Yiyeh Kodesh. And then we could learn the Lo Yiyeh Kodesh that it says that's also a Te'eva. Mita'eva ha'amar b'mishkav zachar. It's referring to the Te'eva that said mishkav zachar. Dechsiva sheyishkav zachar mishkav isha. Te'eva also shneim demembam. So both these kadeshes are referring to Te'eva, and therefore Lo Yiyeh Kadesh is talking about ma Te'eva misham is nishkav af nishkav mashma af nishkav mashma. So too Lo Yiyeh Kadesh is referring to the nishkav. Divrei Rabbi Shmuel. That's how we know a person can't allow himself to be penetrated. It's a law of a lo yiyeh kadosh. Rabbi Kiva, that's not where it's from. Ein tzara. You don't need a separate law of lo yiyeh kadosh. I could show you from within the psukim that discuss mishkav zachar a prohibition to allow oneself to be penetrated, because Harei Omer ves zachar lo yisishkav mishkavei isha karubei lo yisishachiv. So it could be lo yisishkav, one should not penetrate, and lo yisishachiv, one should not allow themselves to be penetrated. So from the same lav of Eloi Sishkav, we will learn both things. The nafkamina we are shortly going to see is if there's one malchus or two malchus. If someone is in one behelamachas, penetrates a male, and then allows himself to be penetrated by a male, according to Rabbi Shmuel, there's two lav in here. There's the Lo Yiyeh Kadesh, and there's the Lo Sishkav. So there would be two carbon chatoses. But according to Rabbi Kiva, it's the same word of Lo Sishkav that we're saying takes on a dual purpose, but there's only one lav there. Therefore, if someone did both those things, he would only bring one korban. Okay? That takes care of humans. Behema minolam. How do we know sodomy is going to be usher? The Tanur Rabbanan. Ish prat cotton. Of course, a cotton is not chayv if he penetrates a behema. Asher yitein shechavtoi behema. He penetrates an animal. Ben gedoyle ben katana. We don't care if the animal is an adult animal or the animal is a minor animal. That's not relevant. What's relevant is the person, the perpetrator. What is his misa? What is his einish? moishumas, and we learn it's beskila. At oimer beskila. Who said that being mishkav behema is skila? Oy enay elav achas mikol misa shamuris b'tayra. Zoktem u'nemer lakan taharagu, nemer lahalom ki harak targen. It says taharagu right over here. It says v'ish asher yitein ishchavtoi v'behema moishumas v'yas habehema taharagu. And we learn taharagu. It says taharagu here by the behema. But never lahalon, and it also says by a maces, ki harak targen, malon lalon beskila. We know that the maces get skila, af kan beskila. So to here the isser of sleeping with a behema, the chi of a skila. Zok gemara lamadnu oynish l'shoichi. Once again, this pasuk is all directly speaking of titein shechaftecha, someone who is penetrating a behema. How do you know that if you allow a behemoth to penetrate you, how do you know that there's also a chiyuv skila? Talmud Loimar, it says kol shoichev im behema moishumas. Now that pasuk shoichev im behema means you're penetrating the behemoth. So how do you see nishkav here? Zok Gemara, because it's an extra pasuk. We don't need a pasuk to tell you that someone who penetrates a behemoth is chayv misa. Because as we just quoted in the pasuk, it says v'ish asher yitein shechavtoi b'behem moishumas. So why does the pasuk have to repeat kol shoichev and behem moishumas? Therefore, we'll say that that's referring to a nishkav. Tineyu inyin nishkav. So now lemadu oynish bein l'shoichev bein l'nishkav. We have a pasuk that says that a shoichev and behem, one who penetrates a behem, is chayv skila. And we have a pasuk that says that one who allows himself to be penetrated by a behem also gets skila. But remember, you need to have a lav for each one as well. As haraminayin, where do you see the lav for both these things? Zok to Gemara, Talmud Loimer, tizu b'chol behema loy sitein shechavtecha l'tamava. There's a lav. So l'madnu ashara l'shoichev. That's talking about someone penetrating the animal. L'nishkav minayin. Where do we see a lav that asks someone to be penetrated by a behema? Talmud Loimer, the same pasuk that Rabbi Shmuel used to answer a nishkav to a man, that same pasuk is using to answer a nishkav to a behemoth. Lo yekadosh mi bnei Yisrael v'yomer v'gam kadosh haya ba'aret divrei Rabbi Shmuel. So let's make a cheshbon over here. What if someone allows himself behelam echad to be penetrated side by a male, side by a human, and side by a behemoth, right? According to Rabbi Shmuel, he only brings one chavas. Why? Because the both being penetrated by a human and being penetrated by a behemoth, we learn out of lo yekadosh. It's one lav. So according to Rabbi Shmuel, if someone did both of these behelam achad, it's only one lav, he would only bring one chavas. But according to Rabbi Kiva, he learned it from a different place. Rabbi Kiva Aimer Ein Yitzarech. And the same way he learned by Mishkav Zachar of Loy Sishkav, he learned Loy Sishachev. So too by the behemoth, when it says Loisitin Shchavtecha, we dash in Loisitin Shchivascha, don't be penetrated. So according to Rabbi Kiva, if someone allowed himself to be penetrated behelamachas by a man and by a behemoth, there would be two chatois, because one is learned out of Loisitin Shchavtecha, and one is learned out of Kol Shoichev and Behemoth Mashumas. So therefore, there's there's two psukim, one for a male, one for behemoth. By Rabbi Shmuel, it's the same one liyakadosh. On the flip side, if someone allowed himself to be penetrated by a behemoth and he penetrated the behemoth, according to Rabbi Kiva, that's the same law. So there would only be one chiyuv chatos, but according to Rabbi Shmuel, there would be two, because he learns one from lo yakadosh. Okay. Haba ala zocher, someone who penetrates a male, and behavior loves up, and he allowed a male to penetrate him, and he did that behelamachas. Do you bring one chatos or two chatos? So Amar Bavo, it's very simple. The divrei Rabbi Shmuel chayiv shtayim, because one iser is from that the zachar l'shishkav mishkav ve'isha, and the second one is from lo yekadosh. So there's two isurim. So divrei Rabbi Shmuel chayiv shtayim, chadam lo shishkav, the chadam lo yekadosh. The divrei Rabbi Kiva, but according to Rabbi Kiva, who you learn from one word lo shishkav and lo shishachev, they're both one lav. Ein chayiv alakas. There's lo yishkav and lo yishachiv chadi. Even though you pronounce it both ways and you say it means two things, but lemaisa it's only one lav. Okay. What about habo ala behema vehevi behema lav? What if someone behelamachas penetrated the behema and allowed a behema to penetrate him? So Amar Bavo, Bavo says the diver Rabbi Shmuel chayiv shtayim. According to Rabbi Shmuel, there would also be two chiyuvim. Chada milashitin shchavtecha, which is you penetrating the behema. The chada milayia kadesh, which is you being penetrated by the behema. But the diver Rabbi Kiva ain't a chayiv al achas. Why? Because we learn it lashitin shchavtecha ushchivascha chadi. We learn both penetrating and being penetrated from the same law. However, Abaya has a dissenting opinion. Abaya Amar afilu the diver Rabbi Shmuel nami ain't a chayiv al achas. Even according to Rabbi Shmuel, if someone was boil a behema and was nival by the behema, there's only one law. We just said it's Layir Kadesh. Zokt Abaye, that's not, even though Rabbi Shmuel said Layir Kadesh, he didn't really mean that. The Chiksiv Layir Kadesh, because when it says Layir Kadesh, the Gavriksiv, that's speaking about humans. It's not speaking about behemoths. So I agree with you that Rabbi Shmuel says that Layir Kadesh is the law for someone allowing himself to be penetrated by a male. But that's not really a law that applies to someone allowing himself to be penetrated by a behemoth. So Ibazoi, El Rabbi Shmuel, Ashar Nishkav Minole. So Hautaka, if you're going to tell me that Rabbi Shmuel doesn't really mean Layir Kadesh, is referring to someone penetrated by a behemoth, so how taka does he know that someone who's penetrated by a behemoth has a lav and has a misa? Zokt Abaye, he really learns it from somewhere else. Nafkalei mikol shoychev im behema moishumas. The pasuk says, a third pasuk says, called shoychev im behema moishumas. We already determined that that's not to teach you shoychev. We already said that's to teach you nishkav. So we say, but the problem is, if it means nishkav, so why did it say call shoychev im behema moishumas? It should have said call nishkav im behema moishumas. Why did the Torah express nishkav using the word shoychev? It's because the Torah is teaching us an additional message. The Torah wants to compare shoychev to nishkav. You know why? To tell you one extra piece of information. Ma shoychev onash v'hizer. Just like by shoychev, we've illustrated and demonstrated that there's sai a lav and sai an oynish. Af nishkav, even though there's no lav for it, onash v'hizer will consider it as if there was a lav as well. Period. Okay, now, hanirba l'zochar, b'hanirba l'behem. What if someone allowed himself to be penetrated by a male human as well as a behem? Omer Abavo, Zok Abavo, l'diver Rabbi Kiva chayiv shtayim, because chada is miloi sishkav, which we learned, it means loy shishachev, which is referring to a human penetrating person. Which is where we learn, according to Rabbi Kiva, that the behemoth can't penetrate. On the diver Rabbi Shmuel, because Rabbi Shmuel, before we introduced Abaye, according to Rabbi Shmuel, you know, side the Isra of being penetrated by a human, and side the Isra of being penetrated by a behemoth, is from Liyah Kodesh, who? They're both the same law. But Abaye Omer, remember Abaye said, that Layir Kadesh is only used to tell us about the Isser of being penetrated by a human, not by a behemoth. So therefore, Abaye Amr, Afil Div Rabbi Shmuel Nami Chayiv Shtayim, because he learned being penetrated by a behemoth, we learned from the Chsiv called Shoychev in behemoth, Moishumas, Imeni in the Shoychev, Tnein on Nishkav, Beafker Achbana, Nishkav, Veloshan Shoychev, My Shoychev, Onash Vehizer, Af Nishkav, Onash Vehizer, like we just said a moment ago. But in the following case, they are all going to agree. Aval Abal Zocher, Vehevi Zocher Alov, and Abal Behema, Vehevi Behema Alov. So this is someone who was Makayim all the various that he could possibly be Makayim. So he penetrated a human and he allowed himself to be penetrated by a human, and so he penetrated a Behema and allowed himself to be penetrated by a Behema. He wanted to make sure he's going to hell any which way. So he wanted to cover all of his bases. The halach is Bein l'Rabavo, Bein l'Abaye, Sai according to Rabavo, who learns that both being penetrated by a behema and being penetrated by a man, we learn out of Loya Kadesh, and Sai according to Abaye, who being penetrated by a behema, we learn from Kol Shoichev and Behema. Regardless, the halacha will be the Rabbi Shmuel Chayiv Sholish. You're only chayiv for 3 out of 4, not for all 4. And the Rabbi Kiva, you only chayiv 2. And how do you break it down? So let's think. According to Rabbi Shmuel, you're going to be chayiv 3 because there's the chayiv for penetrating the male, and there's a chayiv for penetrating the behema. But being penetrated by the male and being penetrated by the behema, according to Rabbi Vo, they're both learned from Lo Yeh Kodesh. So therefore, you can't get two carbon chatases for that. According to Abaye, that you learn being penetrated from a behema and being penetrated by a male are from 2 different places. So in Yechanami, you get 2 chatois for that. But you don't get 2 chatois for penetrating a male and being penetrated by a male, because those are both learned out of Lo Sishkav, Lo Sishochet. So that's also one lav. So either way you slice it or dice it, there's only going to be 3 chatois. And the Rabbi Kiva chayiv shtayim, because both side being penetrated by the male is learned from the same lav as penetrating a male, and being penetrated by a behema is learned from the same lav as penetrating a behema. So that'll be a total of only 2 chiyuvei chatas. About Tanu Rabbanon, Zachur loy asu boy katan kegoda. If someone is being over mishkav zachar and he's penetrating a male, it makes a difference if the male that he's penetrating is an adult or a minor. So right away, they should set off an alarm bell. What do we care who he's penetrating? If he's an adult doing the penetration, so he should be chayiv misa no matter what. Yet, the Bride is telling us that it's not so simple. It's important to know who is being penetrated, because that will impact whether the person doing the penetration will be chayiv misa or not. And we'll get back to that in just a moment. But behema also bought katana kagdoila. Someone penetrates an animal, it's completely irrelevant to age of the animal. Someone penetrates an animal is chayiv skila. So frankly, my loy also bought katan kagdoila. What does the brisa mean when the brisa says you have to look at the age of the one who's penetrated? Why is that relevant? Like about whether or not a guy who did the penetration is chayiv misa. He did mishkav zachar. What's the difference if he did it on a minor or an adult? Amarav, I'll tell you what it means. If the person who this male penetrated was less than 9 years old, a male who's less than 9 years old is not royal appeal. So we don't even consider it a bia, we don't even consider it penetration. It's still a crime and a horrible thing, and we should lock the guy up for the rest of his life. But nevertheless, it doesn't follow the rules of Mishkav Zachar, and therefore there would be no Chiyuv Misa for that. Ushmul Amar, if the child is between 3 and 9, according to Shmuel, that's also considered penetration, and they'd be a Chiyuv Misa. But if the child is under 3, that doesn't carry with it a Chiyuv Misa. What is the machlokes between Rav and Shmuel if the age of Bia is 9 or if the age of Bia is 3? Rav Savar told the Isei B'Shoichev Ika B'Nishkav. Any person who could be a shoichev, could be a nishkav, and we know once someone is 9 years old, he's royal abiyah. It says mishkevei isha, and we know that a girl who's less than 3 years old, it's not called a biyah. Therefore, if the child is over 3, it's called a biyah. Tanya Kavosei the Rav. You have a brayza that supports Rav Shita, and Rav Shita is that it's 9 years, that's the cutoff. Because it says, Zachar ben Teisha Shanim B'Yom Echad, a male who's 9 years old, and one day, Habal HaBehema, that is Mizana with a behema that penetrates a behema, Ben Kedarka, say if it's a female behema and he's Mizana with it the normal way, and Ben Shaloi Kedarka, and say if he is Mizana Shaloi Kedarka, Via Isha Hamavia Sabehema, and a woman who brings a male animal upon her. Again, Ben Kedarka, Ben Shaloi Kedarka, we don't care in what fashion she did this nus. Chayiv, it will be chayiv. Okay, gewaltig. Okay, let's stop here, and we will be mamshech tomorrow. This is too of a heavy Gemara. Yeah, it was very, very intense. It was very intense. Yeah.